Welcome to App Stories, a weekly exploration of the world of apps. Today's show is brought to you by Linode and SaneBox. I'm John Voorhees, and with me, as always, is Federico Viticci, straight from Rome. How are you today, Federico?
I'm doing fine, thank you. What an introduction, John.
I know. Well, it's funny. Well, it's funny, not funny. Last week, when we recorded, I kind of suggested that you were quarantined inadvertently, and we joked about it because you weren't, and Rome wasn't on lockdown. But what a difference a week makes. Because things have changed, unfortunately, dramatically for the worse in Italy, and the government's taken a lot of actions to try to stem the tide of the virus in the country, and so you've been spending a lot of quality time with your girlfriend at home, I guess, huh?
Yes. So let me just say up front, because we got a bunch of listeners and readers asking.
Yes.
As of today, when we're recording the show, it's Thursday, March 12, both Sylvia and I and the dogs are totally fine. Of course, Italy has been for the past 3 days on complete lockdown. So there's no more like red zone like in northern Italy.
Right.
All of Italy is on lockdown. And it first started with a lockdown of certain public places and activities, and now it became a full-on lockdown where basically just supermarkets and pharmacies are open, and it is you cannot go out basically unless you gotta go buy groceries or go to the pharmacy or go to attend to any other emergency, but you need to sign a document that basically you take responsibility for what you're doing. There's police in the streets doing checkpoints and all that kind of stuff, because the situation with the coronavirus is not good. We have unfortunately, we just passed 1,000 confirmed victims, and the cases are going up, and that forced the government to take drastic measures to combat the spread of the virus. And so I've been spending lots of time at home. I mean, this is, as you said, funny, not funny. This is not, at least personally speaking, for me, it's not a huge change from my regular lifestyle, because I do spend most of my days at home. I have noticed, of course, the difference. Sylvia and I cannot go to the supermarket together anymore, because only one member per family can go buy groceries, and we cannot go to the dog park anymore. In theory, we're supposed to be walking the dogs just down the street by our house. So I, of course, have noticed the difference. But I'm used to it. I'm used to spending time at home, so that hasn't been a major disruption to me personally. It has been for Sylvia. Of course, Sylvia used to go out more and go to class and, to dance and teach dance. And of course, my friends, we haven't been able to spend time together as much. We can only see one of our friends, who also happens to be our neighbor. She literally lives in the building next door, so we can at least see one of our friends. But yeah, it's been so eerie, Just one time we had to drive around Rome because Sylvia had a dentist appointment, and just at 3 p.m. a very central area of Rome was basically nobody was around. I took a picture at an intersection that I sent you guys, and there was just one other car at that intersection, which is usually bustling with cars and public transportation. It's so weird and unusual, but I believe it's what's necessary right now, and I do believe that the government is doing what's right, and I tend to be. I'm not a political person in the sense that I'm usually not a fan of the people that have governed Italy for the past few years, but I gotta say that this time I'm impressed with the action that the government has been taking, and I do believe that we are now finally taking this seriously. Maybe last month in February, when it was starting to spread, maybe a bunch of us didn't necessarily take this as seriously as we had to at the time. I do believe that now all of us in Italy, we are trying to be as responsible as possible. And I'm sure that we will get through this, and hopefully we'll start seeing the results from this lockdown. Of course, it's not like flipping a switch. You gotta wait a week, 10 days, maybe 2 weeks for the actual numbers to go down once you apply a complete lockdown to a country. We saw that with China. We saw that with South Korea. So we still need to wait, but I think I hope and I think it will work. But for now, we're spending lots of time at home. I'm working on my shortcuts. I'm playing video games. I'm trying to distract the dogs as much as possible because, of course, dogs want to go out and run at the park and see other dogs, and they cannot do that right now. So even though I'm used to being at home, I've been adjusting myself, is what I'm saying, and also trying to keep the content coming for the club and Mac Stories, and of course doing the podcasts. So yeah, I'm fine. I'm adjusting. People around me are taking a bit longer to adjust, but we'll get through this.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. I mean, I know I've seen some of the pictures of central Rome, and it's just shocking to me because I think in the New York Times I saw this one picture of the Spanish Steps, and there were literally no people around, and it was in the middle of the morning. And I just remember, it was only like maybe 90 days ago that you and I were walking right past the Spanish Steps together, and you could barely walk side by side because there were so many people around, and it was just people were in the way. And now it's absolutely empty, which is just amazing to me. Yeah, I understand what you mean in terms of an adjustment. It's definitely an adjustment. It's not nearly as bad in the United States yet, at least all parts of the United States yet. Certainly not where I live. Although today is the first day that my family is all home because school has been canceled. Yeah. So, little by little things are changing. And I know what you mean about not obviously I work from home too. So my life has not been interrupted in the same way either. But I have found it's those little things that you do notice the differences. Having my family around, not going to certain places if I don't have to, all that sort of thing. But, you're right. The writing is a nice distraction, and I hope that it's not just a distraction for you and me, but it's also a good distraction for everybody who's reading it and listening to the show. And so I think we ought to dive into our topic today. What do you say?
Yes. It is at this time, because we do produce a website and a podcast, I think it is also our responsibility to keep that going, because it's important to keep people informed, and I know that it's a strange and difficult time for many, but we also need to provide entertainment, and we need to keep doing what we do because, humans face challenges. Historically, we've faced multiple challenges, but we need to keep going because resilience is what defines us during these difficult times, and so we need to keep doing what we do. And this week, so you came up with this fun idea for an episode, John. Why don't you present the topic that you wanted us to discuss?
All right. What I thought would be interesting would be to talk about apps that we'd like to see Apple make. And the reason that I started thinking about this was with the flood of rumors that we saw coming out of both Mac rumors and 9to5Mac earlier, I guess, as people listened to this last week. Because, there have been rumors about things like a fitness app and new things with messages. And it got me thinking, how would we like to see Apple's current apps change? And what new ones might we like to have introduced? Because, you and I have talked, and I think one of the first things we should talk about is a password manager, because that's one of the things that you and I have talked about in the past, is that settings on an iPhone or an iPad has gotten really hard to use. I think there's so much in there, and I really feel like that's like the first place I would go to think about breaking things out into separate apps. And a password manager, I think, is really a good place to start because it's super useful to everybody. Everybody uses passwords of one sort or another. And I think Apple's done a really nice job with the way passwords are integrated with Safari and with apps and other places in the system. And now we've even got, like sign in with Apple. But if for some reason you need to go find a password that's not auto-populated in some other place, it's not that easy. I mean, you have to go digging around in the settings and then do a search or scroll through a really long list if you've been online for any length of time. It's not a great experience from the settings app. And I think it would be much better presented if it was done in a nicely designed app.
Yeah, it would be much easier and more intuitive and faster for people to find their accounts and passwords, if only because I believe right now there's a disconnect between what Apple is trying to achieve with all of their authentication and password initiatives and the actual experience of using that. Because Apple and the Safari and the WebKit teams, they've been trying to remove as much friction as possible, right? From the experience of creating an account and creating a secure password and storing that information and retrieving that information in a way that is easy, integrated with the keyboard, with the system, with Face ID, with Touch ID. But getting to that stuff, right? Getting to those accounts and those passwords, if you're out of Safari, it's not nearly as intuitive and as easy as it is when you're using the browser. So I do believe that have it be like a standalone accounts or passwords or wallet is already being used, unfortunately.
Right.
It's another product. But anyway, make it be a standalone app would make everything so much easier and faster and easier to find and easier to use. And in doing that, Apple could also tackle some of the missing functionality from the things they've been doing with accounts and passwords. For example, ship a more full-featured UI, for example, to group accounts by type, maybe, or by website, to make it more visually appealing. Right now it's just a basic list of domain names, and I wonder maybe it could be something a little fancier, like in 1Password, for example, and you could have favorites, maybe, and also. Of course, there's I guess the big missing feature is support for one-time authentication codes, right? The 6-digit numbers that expire every 30 seconds and that you need to input for all those services that use two-factor authentication. And so that is the reason why I still need to use 1Password, which is where I store my two-factor authentication data and codes. And given the prominence of two-factor authentication in everywhere, basically, these days, I think it's Apple's responsibility right now to offer people a default solution for that, because they need to incentivize, right, using two-factor authentication whenever possible. And because it's a best practice, because it makes everything more secure. But right now, in doing so, they also need to either tell people, well, don't use they're not telling that, but basically it's implied, I guess, that if you want to use two-factor authentication and you want to use the Apple produced system, you either have to, your only solution is to use SMS codes. So to receive codes via text messages, which is not the best practice, because we've heard all the stories of like people with malicious intents being able to intercept your SMS messages, or maybe just like scam, or not scam, but like do social engineering with the carrier to clone your SIM card or in your phone number. You don't want to use SMS authentication, is what I'm saying. You want to use what's the name, like a password manager that has like an authenticator app is the name of that you usually see online.
Yes.
So I think they should address these missing features, and they should also consider some maybe useful extras, like bring family sharing into this. So the idea of being able to share an account with multiple family members in a way that is secure and designed around iCloud family sharing and all of that. Maybe have support for secure notes and secure attachments, which is something that we've seen in Apple Notes, for example, and it could be so much richer and more full-featured if it was a standalone app, right? So I think there's a place for this kind of default Apple-made type of standalone product on all of Apple's platforms. I would love to see it on the iPhone, on the iPad, on the Mac, to an extent on the watch. But I think And because it would be made by Apple, it would be able to take advantage of all the biometric authentication stuff that the company is doing. Again, from the watch on your wrist to Face ID to Touch ID. So they should do it, because I would love to see Apple take this, go the extra mile and finally go to the next level with all of this. Take it out of settings, have it be its own standalone thing so that you can do even more.
Yeah, I feel like it is kind of the last mile on what's already been done, because what already is there is very useful, but having it as a standalone app would make it just that much better that I think it would make a big difference. Let me ask you this. Would you put it in Wallet maybe? Because when you look at Wallet right now, it's just a vertical scrolling list of cards of various kinds that you have in the wallet and passes and whatnot. There's no tab bar on the bottom, but I could see this getting split into cards and passwords with a tab bar or something at the bottom, because there is, it does make sense to a degree to have like credit cards and debit cards and things like that in with your passwords. That's certainly how 1Password does it.
So
it's a hard question, isn't it? I mean, because I wonder if it would just junk up the wallet too much.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of all the junk that I have in my wallet app right now, like of all those loyalty cards and like expired tickets that I keep meaning to delete
from WWDC last year, right?
Well, those I'm keeping as like as a memory, as a token.
Okay,
but like expired plane tickets and all that kind of stuff. They should really be hidden by default after a certain amount of time. I really don't understand why.
I just looked and I have I have my ticket in here from when I visited you in December.
But yeah, I don't know if we should go into Wallet, because I don't know if people will associate like keeping your passwords in a wallet. Like it has more of a money and like loyalty cards connotation to me. I would really love to see like a standalone passwords or accounts app. Yeah.
I think I lean that way as well. Although they're similar, but they're different, and I kind of agree that. And I think that there's enough stuff that you have with passwords that's enough information that it probably would do well to be in a separate app. The one thing I'd hate to do is to have things split out of settings, which is kind of overburdened already, and then put it somewhere else where it overwhelms another app. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Linode. Whether you're working on a personal project or managing your enterprise's infrastructure, Linode has the pricing, support, and scale that you need to take your project to the next level. They have 11 data centers worldwide, including their newest one in Sydney, Australia. And with their enterprise-grade hardware, S3-compatible storage option, and their next-generation network, Linode delivers the performance you expect at a surprisingly good price. Get started with Linode today with a $20 credit for listeners of this show, and you'll have access to native SSD storage, a 40-gigabit network, and industry-leading processors, a revamped cloud manager built on an open-source single-page app, root access to your servers, along with an API version 4 and Python CLI, Nanode plans starting as low as $5, and a whole lot more. Just go on over to linode.com/appstories and use the promo code AppStories2020 when creating a new Linode account, and you'll get $20 off towards your next project. Oh, and you know what? Linode is hiring right now, too. So if you're interested in checking that out, go to linode.com/careers. Once again, that URL is linode.com/appstories and the promo code AppStories2020 to get that $20 credit. Our thanks to Linode for their support of the show.
So next up, I want to talk about this idea, which you put in our document, and I think is really interesting. Given the current rumors for watchOS 7 and this year's Apple Watch updates, sleep tracking.
Right.
So The rumor goes that Apple has been working on adding sleep tracking support to the Apple Watch and watchOS for the past couple of years, and they're finally ready to show with the upcoming version of watchOS and the upcoming hardware refresh of the Apple Watch. So in theory, you should be able to wear your watch to bed at night, and you will be able to use it as a sleep tracker that in theory will give you different data points for the quality of your sleep and of course the length of your sleep and maybe your heart rate. The data that we already see in some existing third-party sleep trackers for the watch and the iPhone. Now, my question, John, why should Apple have, and I guess I have an idea where the answer is going, why should Apple make a dedicated sleep app instead of just throwing all of that data into the health app?
Well, I mean, my assumption, I think, when I think about this is that Apple will be able to do it in a way that third parties can't, just because they control the operating system and the underlying technology, and that they'll be able to come up with a way with a combination of hardware and changes to watchOS that will enhance their ability to do this. That's kind of what I assume going into this. And I also assume that they haven't done it yet because they're not satisfied with where the battery life is. And you do hear people from time to time say, well, it's already pretty close. You can, if you just charge your watch for a little bit during the day, you can sleep track at night wearing your watch to bed. But I think that works a lot less well for people who are also using the Apple Watch pretty seriously as a fitness tracker. Because I don't know if you've done this before, but if you go out for like a long walk and you put on use the workout app and turn on a long walk workout, it really drains the battery a lot faster than if you're just, around your house for the day working or whatever. So I just don't feel like the battery life is there yet, and that's why we haven't seen it. The other thing is, I think it's got to be combined with some other operating system features. For instance, if you own just one Apple Watch, as most people I assume do, if you go to bed and you want to start sleep tracking, you really need to put it in theater mode or something, which is not really designed for sleep tracking. But if you don't want the watch face lighting up throughout the night and possibly waking yourself or somebody else up, then it's really best to put it in theater mode and make sure the notifications are off and all of those things. And I think with a good built-in Apple sleep tracking app, a lot of that could be taken care of automatically. So once it detects that you're going to bed or you tell it you're going to bed, all those things get turned on automatically so that you're not interrupted by a buzz on your wrist or the face of the watch lighting up in the middle of the night.
Yeah. So here's my prediction.
Okay.
So I think they will do a sleep app on the watch, but there will be no sleep app on the iPhone. I think on the iPhone, you will just see this data in health. Mm-hmm. Maybe though on the watch you will have a sleep app, just like you have a heart rate app on the watch, for example,
or noise is another one,
or noise,
right?
or the ECG. Like those are all apps and like actual icons on the watch home screen. But I think it'll just be living in health on the iPhone. And I absolutely agree with everything you said. They should do it. I've been using what's the name of the sleep tracker that I use, John?
Do you use AutoSleep?
I use AutoSleep. Thank you. I was saying HeartWatch, but HeartWatch is also from the same developer, but
right.
It's for heart rate. I use AutoSleep. I've been using AutoSleep ever since it came out, basically. And obviously, if Apple does its own sleep tracking, that'll be a problem for a third-party developer, such as his name is David Walsh. But I believe, third-party developers maybe will be able to access that data and provide you with more visualizations, more charts, and like a more powerful, more detailed breakdown of all those numbers. But what really matters though is the actual underlying technology that will monitor your sleep. And I believe Apple can do so in a very efficient way, in a way that third-party developers have not been able to do so far, because the current state of sleep tracking basically revolves around making sense of a bunch of different motion data points that come from the watch to the iPhone, right? And I believe Apple can do a more like dedicated and optimized system that maybe developers will be able to get access to. And so in theory, at least that's my theory, you will get a default experience on the watch and health on the iPhone, and you will get the numbers, you will get the data from the new Apple-made system. But ideally, third-party developers will get access to this new official sleep API. And so apps like AutoSleep, again, that's my theory, apps like AutoSleep will be able to get the numbers directly from Apple, but present them to you in a way that is more sophisticated, maybe. At least that's my hope.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So the next item on my list, this is something that I've been, I wanted to have this for a few years now, and I think I mentioned it ever since we started Up Stories. I'm pretty sure that I mentioned this a couple of years ago.
I think so.
I want Apple to make a family dashboard. So my idea is, take a look at apps like Picnic, for example. It's a popular third-party app for families. And there's a bunch of family dashboards that you can get on the App Store for the iPhone and iPad. My idea is Apple has an existing system for family sharing called, unsurprisingly, Family Sharing. And it's based on iCloud, and it lets you share calendars, reminders lists, and iCloud space, and lets you use Find My Friends. And of course, there's iMessage, there's, photo streams, for example. There's all the other iCloud-based services that Apple uses, including Apple Music. Now, all of this, they should come together into a single experience, a single dashboard that provides you with an overview of your family and your family members. So you can more easily see what's on the calendar. You can more easily find your, for example, your partner's location or your kids' locations, and you can message them. And maybe there's a way to see tasks and events in a single screen. And maybe there's an entertainment area where you can see what other family members are listening to in Apple Music or watching in Apple TV Plus, or maybe what they're playing in Apple Arcade, and maybe join them in a game, or maybe try to reach the same achievement in the same game from Apple Arcade. So my idea of a family dashboard done by Apple based on family sharing and iCloud and all the new Apple services that exist, again, Apple Music, TV Plus, Apple Arcade, just this idea of, instead of having these sharing features, right, scattered across the system and really kind of hard to find in multiple apps, to actually have a single dashboard that brings you these features front and center, and that allows you to quickly check upon family members and see what they're up to and get in touch with them and have an overview of what your household is doing this week or playing this week, or just an easier way to communicate and share things and see everybody else's status at the moment.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, the existing family sharing is really starting to show its age a little bit, because we live in a world now, at least when it comes to apps, where more often than not, you've either got an in-app purchase or a subscription involved, and those are not shareable. And I've started to really notice that, especially in the last year or so with my family, where I'll have something that I subscribe to, or I bought an in-app purchase, and my kids or my wife can't use it. And I don't like that at all. I mean, I think that there needs to be a way for that to be broadened for, a full family experience, which is a little closer to what we had originally. It's interesting too, Federico, because one of the rumors is that there might be management of Apple Watches coming, where you could, as a parent, manage the Apple Watches of kids. And I could see an aspect of this family dashboard being kind of a parent administrator role, where you can, also limit, you do a lot of the things that Screen Time does, which is limit what kids can use and see, manage their devices. And, everybody has that person in their family who's kind of the tech support. And boy, wouldn't it be nice if for a lot of these things, all you had to do is, go into your little administrator panel as the administrator of the family and figure out why Hulu's not working for your, your significant other or whatever, like I did earlier today. Maybe that stuff couldn't be properly surfaced in an app, but I'd like to see both the fun stuff, the sharing and the communication and the location stuff, coupled with the ability to deal with issues and just manage who's got access to what and help fix problems and point people in the right direction if they're not maybe as technically savvy as the person administrating the account.
Tech support dashboard. I love the sound of that.
That sounds great, doesn't it?
That should be the name of the app on the home screen. Tech support dashboard.
Right. It'd be almost like feedback, like the feedback app. But for families. Feedback for families.
You can submit a radar to dad and he's going to take care of it.
That's right. Sometimes I feel like that's how I operate.
You mentioned settings at the beginning of the episode. What would you like to see from settings?
Well, I really feel like settings is so sprawling now that I find myself doing what I do with apps, which is I search for things in settings more often than actually trying to remember where things are. I mean, there are certain things that are obvious and things that I use over and over that I know exactly where they are. But a lot of settings have moved over the years or are just in places that don't work with my brain. And so I end up going through and searching. And searching in settings is weird because sometimes it works really well, sometimes not so much. And what one example is like just searching for passwords. I think there are 2 or 3 different results that come up. And if you know what the icon looks like, you can pick out the one you want if what you're looking for are your website passwords. But it just feels to me like there's too much in there. And one of the things that I would break out, whether it's as part of a family dashboard or just on its own entirely, is screen time, because it feels like what you could do with some of these larger sections of settings is create a settings folder or something where you go in and you've got 3 or 4 or 5 different apps that deal with different aspects of settings. Some of them, maybe it's screen time for some, maybe other ones are connectivity, whether that's Wi-Fi or mobile data or whatever it is. Break this stuff up and make it easier to find, something a little bit like the System Preferences app on the Mac. Because, when you look at that, it's an app, but it really is just kind of like a folder full of mini apps. You open it up, it's got, different rows of icons, which make a lot of sense. They're kind of organized with similar things together. And then you can go down, you can deal with your trackpad and your mouse or your display, or you can look at privacy and other security stuff. It's really easy, I think, to navigate. And it includes its own built-in search as well. Whereas settings on the iPhone, I feel, and the iPad for that matter, I find just a little bit difficult to find what I'm looking for at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Before I talk about the next item on my list, I want to quickly do a quick rundown of sort of obvious candidates that I feel like we've talked about before, and maybe we don't have to go over the details again.
Sure.
Shortcuts for Mac, because of course it should exist on the Mac.
Yes.
Maybe it should be a new version of Automator. Maybe it should coexist with Automator. I don't know. Just bring shortcuts to the Mac, please. Test Flight for Mac. I think it's quite absurd that we still do not have Test Flight on the Mac, especially now that it'll soon be possible for developers to release universal purchases for apps across all of Apple's platforms, but there's still no way to actually test a Mac app using Test Flight. And a new version of Messages for Mac that is, whether it's done via Catalyst or something else, but it should have feature parity with the iPhone and iPad version, and it shouldn't be like a rebranded version of iChat, which is basically what it has been for the past few years. So a brand new version of Messages for Mac. And of course, I also want to mention something that I believe is in my predictions for the connected annual
the Ricky Awards.
I believe it's the actual Ricky, I think. So I want Apple to make Pro versions of like iPad versions of their Pro apps. So basically, I would love to see either Xcode on the iPad or Logic or Final Cut. So at least one Pro app that exists on the Mac to find its way to the iPad and specifically the iPad Pro. I would really love to see that. So that was my quick rundown, John. I do want to mention something that has been in the rumors last week. So the idea that Apple will make a new fitness app that has built-in videos for workouts. And I'll go a step further, and I will say both. I believe 9to5Mac or Mac Rumors maybe initially shared the first report saying that Apple is working on adding workout videos to the existing activity and workout features of the iPhone and Apple Watch. And then I believe CNBC had a blog post, had a news story elaborating on the original blog post, saying that Jay Blahnik, who's in charge of the fitness initiative at Apple, is actually also in charge of this initiative of workout videos that people will be able to follow on the iPhone, the iPad, and maybe even the Apple TV. So I will say this needs to be like its own. It can be in the workout app, so maybe they will be able to do like workout. The workout app at the moment only exists on the watch, and maybe that will come to the iPhone and iPad and Apple TV as well. Or maybe it'll be a new fitness app. I don't know. But I would love Apple to release this as a separate thing that you can put on the big screen of the TV if you're doing workouts at home, or maybe you can put on your iPhone if you want to do some workouts outside at the park or whatever. And they should do localized videos in multiple languages. I think it's really important. I really don't want to see this be like a US only type of thing. Like I would love to get like actual Italian workouts or like, Spanish workouts and Japanese workouts. Like Apple, because of its size and because of its resources, they should be able to do this in a way that is international and global and not just for Americans, because we love Americans, but also other countries exist.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there are fitness apps on like the Apple TV now, but I think if you integrated that with the Apple Watch, it would really go a long way for this to it becoming something that you use not only when you're exercising at the gym or out in the world, but also at home. And it feels like a natural step to do that. And I would think that Apple could find a way to do this internationally. It'll be interesting to see if it's actual videos of people, or maybe something more like the Streaks workouts app, where it's stick figure people. That might be actually easier to internationalize than it would be if you had someone speaking on screen. I don't know, but yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'd also like to see activities while they're at it brought to the iPad. I mean, I'm not walking around. I'm not checking my rings, walking around carrying my iPad, but if I'm sitting at my desk working on my iPad, I want to be able to just kind of check where I am at that point of the day. And yes, I can do it on my watch or pick up my phone, but I would kind of like to see it come to the iPad. Why shouldn't it be a widget and also an app that I can look through?
Mm-hmm. I would love to. By the way, I would love to have like real people doing the videos. Okay. I don't like the stick figures.
You don't.
I prefer to have like an actual human being so that I can copy what they're doing. Like I don't know. I used to love back in the day before they were acquired, Fitstar. I believe it was acquired by Fitbit, and like their videos, they were really good. And I don't know. I just love the energy, right, of like these workout instructors. In the very motivational, and I think especially if you're just starting out, that can really help.
This episode of App Stories is also brought to you by SaneBox. Getting your inbox down to zero is nearly impossible these days. Messages just tend to get lost, buried under all the unimportant things, and that's where SaneBox comes in. As a message comes in, SaneBox will triage your inbox, leaving the important stuff there in your inbox and putting the noise somewhere else so you can deal with it later. It's fantastic. It lets you deal with what's important right now and review everything else in your Sane Later folder when it suits you. SaneBox also has incredibly interesting features like the Sane Black Hole. This is one of my favorites because what it lets you do is when you get an email that refuses to let you unsubscribe to it, you can just drag it into the same black hole and you'll never see another message from that person again. It just resides in the same black hole. And there's sane reminders, which is a good way to get a notification when someone hasn't responded to one of your messages. It's a great reminder service for that sort of thing. Best of all, you can use SaneBox with any email client or phone, and it will work wherever you check your email. I've been using SaneBox for years now. I think it's probably been about 5. Right around the time I started working with Federico at Mac Stories, I signed up for SaneBox, and it's been fantastic. I get tons of email from PR companies and hardware companies, and you know what? It's very easy for the important emails that I get from developers and from other people that we work with at Mac Stories. They can easily get lost. I get beta emails all the time. There's just lots and lots of messages in my inbox. But with SaneBox, I can do things like I have a Sane Betas folder. I set up a rule so any kind of beta related email goes straight to the Sane Betas folder, and I check it about once a day, but I don't have to check it immediately because it's not something that has to be dealt with instantaneously. And that's why SaneBox is so valuable. It lets you choose which things end up in your inbox and which things don't. And it works the way you work. See how SaneBox can work its magic for you too by getting a free 2-week trial right now. Just visit sanebox.com/appstories today to start your free trial, and you'll also get a $25 credit, which is a great deal. That's SaneBox, SANEBOX, sanebox.com/appstories for a $25 credit. Our thanks to SaneBox for their support of the show.
I don't know. I guess finally what I want to mention, John, is the idea of like this other rumor that we had last week about wallpapers.
Yeah.
Like either being like a standalone app or maybe a section of settings, but the idea that Apple will allow developers to create wallpaper extensions so that basically third-party apps can become wallpaper providers, and there will be, again, either a new app or section of settings that where you will be able to have a much better organization of wallpapers, either made by Apple or made by and offered by third-party apps. So I would love to have that. I would love for wallpapers to become like a new sort of like app store category for developers to be creative and release their creations in a way that is, again, well organized. And like right now, the App Store and wallpaper utilities, like that section of the App Store is full of scam apps and like apps that sort of steal wallpapers from other sources, and that's not cool.
Right.
And I kind of want Apple to address this by doing what they did with stickers years ago, where like they allowed creators to easily put together a utility. At the time, it was a sticker pack, and make it available on the App Store and charge money for it. And you know, it's a way for artists and maybe photographers, because we're talking about wallpapers here, to be able to make money from digital goods thanks to the App Store. I think it's a really good idea, and I really would like Apple to do this in a way that is, attribution compliant and also integrated with the App Store, so a safe system. Yeah, I mean, this would be so much better, I believe, than sticker packs, because so many more people care about wallpaper customization, I guess, than buying sticker packs for iMessage.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm excited about it too, and it'll be interesting to see how it's implemented, because we saw with the stickers that they're not that discoverable, and they were kind of buried, and the whole process for finding them and downloading them and accessing them has always been a little clunky. It got better over time, but it's still not super easy. And I do think it might be a mistake to bury it in settings. I mean, I know that the wallpaper setting is one of the top ones. It's fairly high up in settings, so it's not that hard to find. On the other hand, especially if this is something that's going to be sold in an app-like way, why not make it a separate app that then allows developers to plug in their own wallpaper packs into it? I think it would probably benefit from the profile of being on the home screen, and I think people would both be able to discover it better, and it would work better in terms of maybe the previews. I'm not really sure exactly what this would look like. I do wonder whether these are going to be more like individual apps if they do it, or whether these are more like documents that are like plugins to a separate app. I suspect, if anything, it's closer to sticker packs, which are almost like a plugin to the keyboard in Messages than anything else, even though they're sold as though they were a separate app. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it could go either way. Like it could go both ways, maybe.
Right.
Like they could be part of like an extension of an existing app, or they could be like their own thing, like sticker packs that you get from the iMessage App Store. Maybe you could just buy a wallpaper pack from the App Store, or if you're a third-party developer and you want to offer some wallpapers, because I don't know, why not? Like we've seen calendar apps offer iMessage stickers, so why not offer a wallpaper as well? And those could maybe be extensions of like a bigger primary app.
Yeah, it's got to be. The important thing, though, is that when someone downloads one of these packs of wallpapers, they need to understand where they go. Because remember, it's always been an issue with stickers where somebody will say, "Oh, I downloaded your sticker pack. 1 star. They weren't on my home screen," and because it's just that's not how they work. They have to go somewhere that's obvious. I'm not suggesting that there should be, if you buy 10 packs of wallpapers, there should be 10 icons on your home screen, but I think there needs to be a lot of thought put into how that works so that people who are so accustomed to buying apps and then finding them on the last home screen on their iPhone don't get confused as to where these things are going. All right, Federico. Well, that is a good place to stop for today. I'm looking forward to finding out where this is all going. I mean, those rumors are really interesting. We have not heard one way or the other whether there's going to be WWDC this year. I highly doubt that is going to happen. I'm kind of assuming it won't. So it'll be interesting to see when all this, starts getting announced and what actually it's going to look like. But it's fun to talk about for now, and I hope we see some of this stuff implemented in the future. I want to thank our two sponsors again. That's Linode and SaneBox. Of course, you can find me and Federico. We're writing over at Mac Stories and with the club. And Federico's over on Twitter and Instagram. He's at Fatici. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.